because it really reeks of privilege, you know, when these actors and directors say, no, no, we don't want to do politics, we're apolitical. I say, how can you be apolitical, you know? This coaster can be apolitical, but a person cannot be apolitical.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome KABIR KHAN. Thank you so much for coming, KABIR.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone here.
And this is a laddered evening, so, you know, we're going to call Murlikant ji onto stage in a while, but I just wanted to, you know, give us a sense of Kabir's canvas before that. So, Kabir, let me start with just the shaping of you, because like I said, it's unusual for somebody who's mastered the idiom of mainstream cinema to also be dealing with serious, substantive political issues, you know. So tell us a little bit about your grounding. How did you come to cinema? And, you know, you started out as a documentary filmmaker. How has that impacted you as a mainstream filmmaker?
So I think what in a certain sense sets me apart today is something that I was told never to reveal when I first came into Bollywood, which was that I'm a documentary filmmaker. They said, "Batana nahi, log sochenge bore karega." But I used to struggle always as a viewer watching mainstream cinema set without a context. You know, watching love stories in La La Land with no social, political, historical context wasn't something that I enjoyed. And therefore, one of my favorite filmmakers from the mainstream used to be Mani Ratnam, who would do that, right? He would always have a very engaging human story, but set against a larger-than-life political backdrop. And I was shaped by my father. He was one of the founding professors of Jawaharlal Nehru University, and for his work in academics, he was also nominated to the parliament for 2 terms. So politics was dining room conversation for me. You know, we used to have academics and politicians and bureaucrats and diplomats at the dining table, and that really sort of, in a certain sense, shaped me and my outlook towards politics and worldview. And then the second very important stage of my life was actually the time I spent with Saeed Naqvi, the very celebrated journalist. I call him Saeed Bhai. Saeed Bhai actually really shaped my worldview. I was just out of film school. The only reason I wanted to join Saeed Bhai at that point in time was because I knew he travels a lot. I just wanted to travel with him. Saeed Bhai was obsessed at that point in time.
And correct me if you're wrong, you've traveled to 60 or 70 countries.
Yeah, about 90 at last count.
I'm taking out a supari on you, you know. You've lived the life I want.
And this is also something that Saeed Bhai put he told me about this club. I don't even know whether this club exists or not, or it's just mythical. He said there's a club in London called the Club 100, and they only allow people who have traveled to 100 countries. So all my life I've been trying to get membership to that club, but I've not reached 100 as yet. So I'll find out whether it still exists or not. But Saeed Bhai at that point in time was, and this is before our channels started traveling, right? So whatever international politics we were told about was through the prism of CNN and BBC. And Saeed Bhai was obsessed with reporting about world views, world affairs through a South Asian Indian context. And he got some shows, first from Doordarshan, you know, later on from Star Plus, where he would, you know, we would travel and report from different parts of the world. And that really opened my eyes. I was just fresh out of film school. I used to, you know, shoot for him. Talmeez Saab was one of the people who I remember when we went to interview Nelson Mandela. He was there in South Africa. And I realized that, yes, what you see on BBC and CNN is not gospel truth. There's a big gap in between what lies there on the ground and what's being told to us. And that gap between what I say, what's told to us and what should have been told to us is the gap within which actually my first 2-3 films lie, whether it's Kabul Express, or whether it's even New York, which deals with the post-9/11 illegal detentions that took place, or even Tiger, which is one of my most, what you can call one of my most big masala commercial films, but actually The Politics of Tiger, I feel it's one of my most political films. It's actually quite a subversive film, if you look at it.
So I'm going to bring you into each of those and to examine your politics. But you know, because we spent so much of the earlier session trying to bridge this gap in narratives, just for the audience, you know, pick any one of the films, New York or Kabul Express, and can you, in a nutshell, tell what was that gap which the film addressed, you know?
Well, actually, New York, for example. New York, that story was just not being told. For years, post 9/11, you didn't know about the existence of the fact that more than 1,200 men had been picked up from the streets of New York and put into illegal detention, only because of their name and religious identity. The sort of information started coming out years later. By 2005, 2006, the information was coming out, and I was working on it for a documentary at that point in time, when Aditya Chopra actually, post the release of Kabul Express, said that, you know, I think you should make a film a little more mainstream, a little more bigger than Kabul Express. And I didn't quite understand what he meant by that, but he said, you know, take bigger stars and make it a little more accessible to a larger audience. And he told me a story of three friends, and I didn't quite like the story, and then I was thinking about it, and I said, you know, I can actually place this in the world of the research that I've been doing, which is basically, you know, the post 9/11 illegal detentions. And I went back to him, and for a moment he was taken aback, because, you know, at that point in time,
it was a touchy topic.
Also, politics in mainstream cinema was taboo. It was just something you don't do. It was something that they thought that audiences don't like. And here I was trying to set a story which was, and politics of another nation. But, you know, Adi said, he said, I'm apolitical. But in Kabul Express, you let me access the politics and understand the politics as and when I needed them. If you can do the same with New York, I think, you know, why don't you go ahead? We did it, and New York was surprisingly a huge commercial success. And suddenly a lot of producers started, you know, calling me and saying, "Aap ek New York type film hamare liye bana dijiye." I didn't know what that was, but I felt that, okay, that means that you can engage with politics and make a film which will resonate with a larger audience. And I learned that one lesson over there, which I've tried to do in a lot of my films, especially Bajrangi Bhaijaan, is where you need to make the film that people can enjoy at face value. But if you go into the layers beneath, you'll just find the film better, you'll find it more profound, you'll enjoy it more. You know,
So, you know, you just used the word apolitical, so I'm going to come back to examine that. What does that really mean, and does it exist? But I'd love you to share with the audience your own experience about the power of Hindi cinema, you know. So do share with them about being airdropped into Afghanistan during the Mujahideen, and, you know, what happened to you.
That's actually a very important moment in my life, and I've of course told this story many times, so apologies to those who have heard it before. But it's important because it's the moment where I realized the power of what we call Bollywood, how important a platform mainstream cinema is, not only in our country but in you know, large parts of the world, because it literally saved my life. And this happened in 2001. This was post 9/11. I'd had some prior experience in Afghanistan, because in '96 I'd been commissioned by the International Committee of the Red Cross to do a documentary in Afghanistan, and I spent some time in Kabul, but it was uncomfortable because, you know, there was a lot of shelling that was taking place. The Taliban was literally 20 kilometers outside Kabul at that point in time, and every day there would be, you know, rockets hitting the city, and we decided, okay, maybe we should go back and come back when things get better. Of course, they didn't. 2 months later, the Taliban had overrun Kabul, and next 5 years, we couldn't go back. And so post 9/11, when, you know, the Americans started bombing Afghanistan and the Taliban regime in a certain sense collapsed, and the Northern Alliance Mujahideen were moving in, we decided to, like, go in. And I think there were not too many people ready to jump in at that point in time, so there were these producers who got these two mad men ready to go into Afghanistan, and said, okay, we'll back the film that you're making. And basically, it was loosely, the suggestion was, let's look at, you know, the 5 years of Taliban rule. We couldn't go via the usual route.
Is this an apocryphal story, or you bribed a Russian pilot to take you in the helicopter?
Yeah. So we reached Dushanbe, because we couldn't go through the usual route of Peshawar. We reached Dushanbe, and for 14 days we were stuck there, because we were just not being able to reach Afghanistan. We tried to drive, and there was this landslide, and there was this helicopter that we were supposed to take that crashed a day before we were supposed to take it. And I think on day 14, we finally decided, okay, enough is enough. Let's take the flight back to Delhi and go back. We said one last attempt, and we went to the airbase, and there was this Russian military helicopter being loaded with medical supplies. It was going to go into Kabul. And we did the Indian jugaad over there, and we took the Russian pilot aside and basically gave him $2,000 and said, take us to Kabul. And he was delighted with the $2,000, hid us in the cargo and took off. And it's a 40-minute helicopter ride through the Hindu Kush mountains. And he just, we clear the mountains, he brings the helicopter down. It's hovering about 20 feet above the ground, and he says, jump. I mean, $2,000, the least you can do is land and drop us. And he says, no, it's a military helicopter, and if I land and there's some technical jargon about it, it has to reboot, and I'll be off the radar, and I'll have an explanation. You have to jump. So that's how we did. We jumped. And we jumped from a higher height than later the actors who replayed this for Kabul Express did. And the helicopter takes off, and 360 degrees, there's just mountains and snow, and we don't know where Kabul is. And we see this one lone figure walking towards us who's just seen a, Russian chopper drop 2 guys and fly off. And he's coming very menacingly towards us with his Kalashnikov. And he's saying something in Dari. And I promise you, I thought that's the end of it. That's the way my life's end has been written. Nobody will know I'm there because nobody knew I've taken that helicopter to Afghanistan. And, but all I knew is that for the Northern Alliance Mujahideen, they have a soft spot for Indians. So I kept saying, Hindustan, Hindustan. And he came within earshot, and suddenly he must have been 6 feet 3 inches, big, tall, big, burly Mujahideen. He suddenly stopped, and he smiled, and he started singing, Mere Sapno Ki Rani Kab Aayegi Tu. And that day I realized the power of mainstream Hindi cinema. And I said, if I get out of this alive, I'm going to make a film. And that really is the beginning of Kabul Express.
Right. That truly, I think every filmmaker should write that like their Hippocratic oath, ki this is the power I'm wielding. So, but you use the word apolitical, Kabir, and I want to come back to your own name. And the issue of identity is becoming more and more and more important in public discourse. So I want to know your own experience of being Kabir Khan, post 9/11. But first, the idea of being apolitical. You said that Aditya Chopra said he's apolitical, I know that you think that that's not even possible. No human being is apolitical, but can you share that?
So I find a lot of people in the industry say that, "Bhai, hum to apolitical hain," and I get very uncomfortable when they say that because it just also, I mean, it's not in the context of Aditya Chopra. He said it in a sort of a different context, but because it really reeks of privilege, when these actors and directors say, no, we don't want to do politics, we're apolitical. I say, how can you be apolitical, This coaster can be apolitical, but a person cannot be apolitical. And they don't understand when I say the politics of a film, because the moment you use the word politics, they start interpreting it as like
party politics.
BJP versus Congress versus AAP. I said, but that's not politics. Politics is the way you're going to frame your actors, the way you're going to shoot the film, the choice of your dialogues, the way you'll frame your actress. All that is politics. And for a long time, I used to have this debate even with the critics, because I feel even the people who review films, they don't read what I feel is the most important element of a film. It's the politics of a film. I can forgive a shoddy screenplay, bad acting, choppy editing, out of focus shots, but I can't forgive bad politics. And I've seen that. I've seen some films which, they're really well made, really glossy, and those are actually the more dangerous ones because they're really well made, right? And they've been made by people who I know don't have those politics. So it's like I've seen some films which are really communal films, but I know the director, I know the producer. They don't have a communal bone in their body, but their film is a very communal film. And when you try and explain to them, they don't understand it. They say, "Arey, itna serious kyun le rahe ho?" But it's such a powerful medium. The messaging that is going out, I feel you have to be really responsible. Because you're reaching out to millions and millions, and it's an incredibly powerful medium in our country. So I think the choices the actors and the directors and the producers make, one needs to be able to read the politics of a script.
Yeah. when I read that, I really chimed with it because not just in filmmaking, but I think any of us, just by virtue of being a human being, you are political, because I think it's also a value system. Like, how do you see the world? What are the values you'll stand for or fight against, That is...
Your statement that you're apolitical is a political statement.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So, let's take some of your super popular films like Bajrangi Bhaijaan. And, that's such a dangerous name because my team was really worried that I'll come on stage and say Babu Bajrangi instead.
But it's related to that.
It's related. So I would love you to talk about Bajrangi Bhaijaan because it was an absolutely heartwarming, beautiful film. You have Salman Khan carrying that, your choice of a little girl. I don't know how many of you have seen it. Will you raise your hands, those of you who've seen it? Oh, wow.
Oh, that's okay.
So what in that would you say, what was your politics in that? What was the carriers of your politics?
So it's a very simple story. Actually, I'll tell you what happened. I did what's gone on to become this huge, it's called the Spyverse of Bollywood today, the Tiger series, and which has now gone into the Pathan series and all that. So I did the first one called Ek Tha Tiger, which was with Salman Khan. And in the process of making Ek Tha Tiger, there was a lot of tussle between Salman. It was just my third film. Salman was a demigod of Bollywood. And I was trying to do this film with him, and we would have a lot of discussions and debates. But in the process of making that film, through all these arguments and discussions, I also saw that there were certain things that Salman felt very strongly about. And one was the whole sort of secular culture of this country. And he really is a living example of it. He's a product of a mixed marriage, the way he conducts his life. And after that, I told him, I said, somehow you believe so strongly in this, but you've never articulated this on the platform of which you're the god. And after Tiger, and Tiger was this spectacular blockbuster, everybody thought, okay, now we'll make Tiger 2. And I refused to make Tiger 2, and people thought this guy's mad. Like, how do you say no to a blockbuster like that? Because I said, I'm bored. I wanted to make, at the end of the day, we all little boys want to play with toys. I said, well, I want to make an action film. I made an action film. After that, I was bored of action. And I took this film, when I got this two-pager from Vijayendra Prasad, from a very well-known writer from South India, when he told me this literally like a two-line story, I was stumped because I said, this is so up my street, and it is so simple. Why the hell I couldn't have thought of this? And I said, okay, I think the person who needs to do this is Salman. And I went to him, and I said, okay, I know him well enough. I'll read his body language. If I know he's not connecting to it, I'll say, okay, I'll bring you something else. But I literally saw Salman jump off the sofa. And he said, oh my God, what kind of story is this? And he said, we'll do this. And he knew that this film might not be an easy mainstream film to make at that. See, today, Bajrangi is one of the biggest hits of all time. But at that point in time when we were pushing it, we weren't sure. He said...
Because you're getting a Muslim actor to play...
no, I think it's not that.
Bajrangi?
That they've done. Just the politics of the film. See, actually in Bajrangi, more has been spoken about the India-Pakistan issue, about how I've tried to sort of, show there's humanity on both sides. But actually, if you see the first half of the film, it's more about the borders within. The first half actually deals with the borders inside our country. And there were lots of things that I was trying to do. So for me, Bajrangi is a perfect example of the way I've tried to blend what I was talking about, where you can enjoy something at face value and yet talk about something deeper. For example, for those who've seen the film, there's a song called Chicken, a song where the little girl is taken to a dhaba and she's missing her chicken and meat because she's from Pakistan and she's being fed vegetarian food. And he basically dances, Kareena Kapoor and Salman, dance at this dhaba. And the dhaba is called Chaudhury dhaba. And he says, ye hai Chaudhury dhaba, aadha hai non-veg, aadha hai veg. And you decide what you want to eat. This song was written in the face of the beef ban. And it was my statement, sort of, in a certain sense, against that. But at face value, it's just a lovely foot-tapping number that you can enjoy, and it's went on to become probably one of the most favorite songs of children who have seen Bajrangi Bhaijaan. Even till date, I have children coming saying, we love that song. So that's a perfect example of a song you can enjoy at face value without going into the politics beneath. But if you actually get into the politics of the song, you realize it's a very strong statement. And that was true for Bajrangi throughout. And even the title, for example, when I was writing it, I started calling him Bajrangi. And my mother used to ask me, what are you writing? I said, I'm writing this film. And she said, oh, that's an interesting story. And so I said, and this guy, I'm calling him, he's called Bajrangi Bhaijaan. She said, why are you doing that? So I said, why? She says, no, I get the, I don't like the sound of that. I said, what do you mean? She said, no, it just reminds me of Babu Bajrangi. And it got me thinking that how did this name, which when I was growing up, I grew up in Pandara Park in Delhi, and every year we used to do the Ram Leela. All the kids used to get together in Pandara Park and do the Ram Leela. And the top billing was not Lord Ram. The top casting was Hanuman. And we used to have this competition that whoever could climb the tree the fastest would become Hanuman. And I was always very good at climbing trees, so I would become Hanuman every year. I said, how did this name, Bajrangi, which stood for this such a lovable god, become toxic? And why is my mother reacting like that? And I said, okay, maybe this is the way I can reclaim that. And I'm so glad that I stuck with it. And I called him, Bajrangi. And we had huge problems. The VHP filed a PIL against me in the Allahabad High Court saying that the name is blasphemous. You cannot use that title. And in fact, the censor board got affected by it. And they told me that in my censor screening, it got pushed to the last minute. They said, you take your pick, either Bajrangi or Bhaijaan.
No,
don't use both. And I said, why can't I do that? And they said, no, it's a very controversial name. And thankfully, I stood my ground. There were lots of battles I had to fight in that film. And at that point in time, it was a very high-profile film, so I managed to win that battle, and we got the name Bajrangi Bhaijaan. And subsequently, of course, I feel it, in a certain little way, the name Bajrangi again became very endearing for people. So it was a little battle that I fought and I won.
You deserve a full clap for that. It's like. So, Kabir, I want to very quickly focus on Chandu Champion and invite Petkar ji onto stage. But before that, a couple more things. You said that you were also a product of a mixed marriage, and you, of course, bear the title Khan. So in all these years, has that, like you were talking about Bajrangi, has Khan ever been problematic for you, and especially those years when you were doing the 9/11 film, or what has been, and has your relationship to your own name changed? Do you feel it a burden sometimes?
Growing up, I think it was a different India. Never really thought about it in that context. But the first time I realized my name is Khan is, strangely, when I was, going to New York to do a location scout for the film New York, based on a subject where literally men were picked up for their name. And I remember there were 6 people accompanying me, my assistants, and we'd gone to the embassy, and so we were sort of submitting our forms, and when I submitted my form, I could see the lady's expression. She was typing in something, and suddenly something popped up on her screen. I don't know what popped up, but I could see her suddenly freeze for a moment, and then she gave me this yellow slip, and she said, sir, we'll get back to you about it. I said, why? I've been to the US so many times. She said, your name, Kabir Khan, it's very vague. So I said, okay, I'll tell my mother that, but what do you mean vague? She said, no, there can be so many, combinations. I said, yes, but here's a Government of India passport that says I am the Kabir Khan that... But she said, no, I'm really sorry, so we'll get back to you. And that is the first time I realized what the name Khan, because it was on the list of those, some 29 names that the Bush administration had put onto a list, where we later realized that my visa application went straight away to the FBI. And we had to hire an immigration lawyer who actually investigated, and he said, yes, it's in the FBI line, and it's because of your name and because you've been to Afghanistan. And they know, they're very clear, they've read why you've been to Afghanistan for your documentaries, for your feature film, but in your own admission, you've met the Taliban, and you are a Khan. What if you've been compromised? And you're part of a sleeper cell. I said, but how do you counter this logic? That means for the next 15 years, I could be part of a sleeper cell and decide to activate myself and blow myself up, 20 years from there. But that was the kind of thinking. And it shocked me. And after that, subsequently, I was stopped 5 times by the FBI. Every time I went to the US, till a very strange thing which happened with the Obama administration, where New York became very successful. In all the Arab countries where traditionally we were not releasing, we actually released mostly in UAE and these, and suddenly the pirated copy became viral in like Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and the ambassador told us that. And then it got invited to the Cairo Film Festival as the opening film, because usually opening films are unreleased films. So then it started capturing the imagination of people over there, and then an Undersecretary of State from Washington, when they came here, they called up Yashraj Films and they sort of came to meet us. And she told us about how they knew the whole history. And she said that we know there was a targeting because of your name. And but then, of course, subsequently it got sorted out. But that period, it really made me realize, okay, what a difference a name can make.
So, obviously I'm saying this completely facetiously, but it is tragic that these have become that. Actually, I won't make a joke right now. This is how careful we've become. But I was going to say that, you mentioned about being a product of a mixed marriage. You yourself have married, I can't believe we are speaking like this, but you've married a Hindu woman, Mini Mathur, and you've had to face, bizarre situations even over that.
Yeah.
So would you talk
Love
about it?
jihad.
Because I
I'm
think
one of the big love jihad
yes,
pioneers.
That's a joke I was going to make, but I couldn't bring myself to make it, that you really are a love jihadist. 3 generations of love jihad you've been doing. But do talk about it, that...
Yeah, it was, these things started, honestly, when Minnie and I fell in love and we decided to get married, there was a little bit of, some sort of noises made, not in my family so much because, I myself am a product of a mixed marriage. My parents, my mom's Soumya Narayan Rao from Secunderabad, my father's from a Pathan family in Hyderabad, and, so the battles had already been fought. So we were just, enjoying all that. From Minnie, who comes from a Mathur family, and, mostly, as we all know, Mathurs only marry Mathurs. And suddenly she was wanting to marry this Khan. But it all got sorted out pretty soon, and we went ahead with it. But subsequently, we started facing sometimes issues like, in the municipal corporations, they would refuse to believe that if she's Mini Mathur, how she married to a Kabir Khan? And why is her name not then Mini Khan? And why there were a lot of this confusion that would take place, passport renewals, and then this whole attack, because we'd become high profile due to our profession, there was this whole list of the love jihadis, Shah Rukh is part of it, I'm part of it, Saif is part of it. Everybody whose name is Khan and has married a Hindu woman is a love jihadi. So, mostly, honestly, we laugh it away because I am still, at the end of the day, I'm in a very privileged position, right? It doesn't really affect me in a real way. I don't think I will ever be stopped from doing something that I would want to do because of this. But it shows you, what must be happening down the line. What must be happening to couples like this, who are not as high profile as me and Minnie, who are not as rich as Minnie and me, who are not as privileged as Minnie and me. And that makes you uncomfortable. That sort of, sets. And the first time my kids would ask me about this, because it would get reported on social media in some places. So it has been a bit of a uncomfortable navigation just because of the difference in our names.
So, let's move to this absolutely exhilarating story that you discovered, Chandu Champion, and we'll get the champion on stage just now. But just very quickly, how did you find the story? And, what compelled you to tell the story? And what made you pick Kartik Aaryan? You were talking about how you made Salman Khan take on a completely different avatar. Again, what made you pick Kartik Aaryan for a role like this?
So this story actually just came to me by chance, and somebody came and gave me a printout of an old article and said, have you seen this? And I read it, And I said, this can't be true. I said, how can somebody like this exist, have achieved all that they did, and we don't know this, we don't know him? And I, in a certain sense, pride myself at being reasonably well-informed, well-read. I said, how could I not even know the name if this person has actually achieved all that he did? And this story just sounds too, this is a real-life Forrest Gump. This is even wilder than Forrest Gump. I said, okay, if such a person exists, please find him for me. And strangely, we were not. It took us for 2 months, it was a dead end. And then I, thanks to my documentary background, I sort of created a team, and then people started, finding out where we can get in touch. And they actually did manage to get in touch with Mr. Murlikant Petkar and his family. And I remember this was between the 2 lockdowns, and I immediately sat in my car and I just drove. They live in Pune, on one of the suburbs of Pune. And we started talking to him, and I was actually, for those who have seen the film, there's a character played brilliantly by Shreyas Talpade, who's the police inspector, who just doesn't believe. It's literally me the first time I met him. I said, "Ye ho hi nahi sakta. Ye kaise ho sakta hai?" Actually happened like this. And we actually checked everything, the army, the records, and once I realized that this is a true story, I said, this has to be my next film. There's no way. And I remember Arjun, his son, who's also here with us, telling me, and he said, ki, sir, isko jaldi banana. Like, make it while he can still enjoy it. And I remember promising him, I said, this is my next film. Even though I'd made a sports film, I'd made 83 just before that. But I said, no, I want to do this because it is just, for me, it's not a sports film. Actually for me, sports films are not about the sport. They're just this unbelievable story of an underdog. Even 83 is an unbelievable story of underdog. Of course, they're all legends, and that's a story that all of us knew. But this was also something that I said, if I don't tell this story, and if this story gets lost forever, then it would be a crime. And that's how I started my journey.
Get a chair, then Arjun can sit in. Arjun, why don't you join us also? Ravi, आप एक chair. पेटकर जी बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका यहाँ आने का आपने एहसान किया बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है आपको यहाँ पे कम अर्जुन That's Arjun Petkarji's son, and I just wanted to share a little. Arjun has played a big role in documenting, ensuring that his father's story sees the light of day. So he's a big custodian of the story, and it's a pleasure to have you, Arjun. And before we get into this story, I wanted to say just one little thing which Arjun told us. He said, this military army blazer that Petkarji is wearing is so precious to him. If someone gave him 10 crores also, he would never change this blazer. So, Petkarji, मैं आपसे पहले जब हम बात कर रहे थे, मैंने आपसे पूछा कि आप सब स्पोर्ट्स सब किए हैं, आप रेसलिंग किए हैं, बॉक्सिंग किए हैं, स्विमिंग किए हैं, टीटी मतलब जैवलिन, जिसका नाम ले आप इस पे शामिल थे, तो आपको स्पोर्ट्स में इतना दिलचस्प इंटरेस्ट क्यों आया?
क्योंकि मैं बॉयज़ बटन में पहले जॉइंट हुआ था, तो बॉयज़ में मैंने फौज में गया, तो फौज में सब मिल्खा सिंह, ये जो सब जुड़े प्लेयर हैं उनके नाम लेकर एक कर्नल सिंह मिला। तो आर्मी में हर एक किस्म का ट्रेनिंग मिलता है। मैं पहले बहुत अच्छा हॉकी करता था, हॉकी के बाद बॉक्सिंग खेलने लगा। बॉक्सिंग में मैंने 1964 में सिल्वर मतलब 2 नंबर का प्राइज दिया था। मैं आदमी ने लाइफ में कभी घमंड नहीं करना चाहिए, क्यों कि मैं 13 फाइट जीता था, 13 कंट्री से जीता था, लेकिन फाइनल में मुझे ज़्यादा घमंड हो गया था। मैं ये बनूंगा, मैं प्लेट जो ब्रेड खाने वो मैं बताऊंगा। जब घमंड आ गया तो तो आदमी ने घमंड कभी नहीं करना चाहिए कि मैं 13 फाइट जीत गया तो मुझे इतना खुशी हुआ था क्योंकि मेरा छोटू टाइगर बोलकर नाम था। मैं कभी भी एक बॉक्सिंग मारते हैं तो हमेशा नॉकआउट करते थे। ऐसे 13 नॉकआउट करने के बाद पहले उगांदा जो काले काले आदमी रहते उनको मुँह ये रहता है, तो उगांदे के बॉक्सर ने मुझे एक फाइट मारा, मैं भी खुश हो गया।
पर आप कह रहे थे जैसे मैं कबीर जी को पूछूंगी, यू चोज दिस वर्ड चंदू चैंपियन, तो आपको भी ये चंदू नाम से बहुत नफरत थी नो? आपको फिल्म में भी दिखाते, आप गुस्से में आ जाते थे, तो आपको क्यों मतलब चंदू से इतना गुस्सा क्यों होता था जब आपको चंदू बुलाए?
क्योंकि मैं स्कूल में पढ़ता था, पढ़ाई में इतना अच्छा नहीं था। और स्कूल के मास्टर जी ने पूछा था सबको, तुम क्या बनेगा? उसने बोला मैं फौजी बनेगा। तुम क्या बनेगा? इंजीनियर बनेगा। तुम क्या बनेगा? डॉक्टर बनेगा। तो मेरे को पूछा तुम क्या बनेगा? मैं ओलंपिक का गोल्ड मेडल लाएगा। क्योंकि मैं
इज्जत, आप देखे थे कि जो खेलते हैं उनको इज्जत मिलता है, आपको वो इज्जत चाहिए था?
नहीं, जब बॉक्सिंग में एक का बात छोड़ो, जो चंदू, इसके लिए गुस्सा था कि 4-5 आदमी ने सब बताया तो मुझे गांव के जो छोटे, तो गांव में कैसे चिढ़ाते थे, टोकन नाम देके ये चंदू, ये बंडू, ऐसा चिढ़ाते थे। तो ऐसा उसी टाइम में मेरा नाम उन लोगों ने चंदू बोला, तो चंदू बोला तो मुझे इतना गुस्सा आता था कि चंदू नहीं, मैं चैंपियन है करके उस टाइम से दिल में रखकर ओलंपिक का गोल्ड मेडल लेने का उसी दिल में ठहरा। तो
आपका जो पब्लिक जो आपने अचीव किया है वो तो हम जानते हैं। अब कबीर जी का फिल्म देख के आपका कहानी को हम वापस हासिल किया है, पर आप अंदर का जो एक मनोबल ज़रूरत है कि आपने इतना कठिनाई को सामना किया है, वो ताकत आपको कहाँ से मिला? वो
देखो लाइफ में क्या है, हैप्पीनेस इज बेस्ट राइट। कोई भी काम करते हो तो दिल से करना चाहिए, दिल से नहीं करने से काम नहीं होता है। और क्या है, मैं ये काम नहीं कर सकता हूँ और हम लोग सब मिलकर कर सकते हैं, इसको भरोसा रखना चाहिए।
और आपका आर्मी में शामिल होना आपका कैसे लाइफ में कैसे परिवर्तन लाया? आर्मी का अनुसर क्या हुआ है आप पे?
देखो आर्मी में जो मैं बॉयज़ बटालियन में भर्ती हो गया तो मैं एक्चुअली देहात का लड़का था, मुझे उसके बारे में कुछ नहीं, लेकिन आर्मी में मुझे डिसिप्लिन सिखा दिए, चलने के लिए सिखा दिया। जो स्पोर्ट्स के मास्टर हैं उन्होंने मुझे अच्छी ट्रेनिंग दी है, हॉकी खेलने के लिए हर खेल के लिए ट्रेनिंग उधर मिलती थी, उसमें वो ट्रेनिंग में मैं बहुत अच्छा करता था। और मुझे उसी टाइम में सैनिक समाचार, मतलब यूनिट में एक सैनिक समाचार होता है उसमें पढ़ने के लिए बोलते हैं, तो उसी टाइम मैंने जो किताब में फोटो देखकर देखिए ये स्पोर्ट्समैन ऐसा ब्लेजर डालने का, कोट डालने का, तब मैं स्पोर्ट्समैन बनने के बाद कोट मिलता है तब मुझे पता चलेगा पहले बोलते। और आर्मी में बहुत अच्छा डिसिप्लिन होता है, अच्छे सिखाते हैं और उससे एक आदमी अच्छा बनता है। जैसे कि मैं जैसे ये अभी ब्लेजर पहन कर तो मैं ये भी कहूँ, तो मेरे साथ मिल्खा सिंह भी मेरे से थोड़े सीनियर थे, उनका भी आदर्श लेना पड़ा, मुझे मिल गया, तो जिसके वजह से मैं इतना जो ये बन गया वो सब। और दूसरा बात, जो कबीर साहब ने मेरी फिल्म जो बनाई वो आप लोगों ने सबने देखा है, किसने देखा नहीं तो आप जरूर देख लीजिएगा।
जरूर। तो
और मुझे
मुरलीकांत जी, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूँगी और मैं अभी कबीर से भी कुछ प्रश्न पूछने चाह रही हूँ, पर ये पूरा लंबा सफ़र में आप, जैसे मैं कह रही हूँ आपने बहुत कठिनाई, आप घर छोड़े थे, आप 13 साल के थे, फिर आप 15-20 साल वापस नहीं गए, आप अकेले थे, आप अंग्रेज़ी नहीं बोलते थे, आप मतलब आर्मी में शामिल हुए, आप बहुत सारी बिलायत देशों में गए, पर ये सब में आपको कभी एकदम मतलब कहानी तो पूरा पॉजिटिव है, पर इसमें कभी आपको निराशा हुई कोई, मतलब एकदम जहाँ आपका दिल टूट गया या आपका सब्र टूट गया?
देखो जब मैं मिलिट्री हॉस्पिटल में एडमिट था 2 साल कोमा में होने के बाद, सब होने के बाद मेरे को ट्रीटमेंट के लिए अश्विनी हॉस्पिटल बॉम्बे में भेजा गया था। बॉम्बे में क्योंकि जो न्यूरो सर्जन वो सबसे ज़्यादा ये जो बॉम्बे में हॉस्पिटल में है, कि दिल्ली हॉस्पिटल मिलिट्री हॉस्पिटल है ये सर। और मैं स्टेट, मेरा महाराष्ट्र स्टेट था, इसलिए मुझे उधर अश्विनी हॉस्पिटल में ट्रांसफ़र कर दिया। तो अश्विनी हॉस्पिटल में मैं था और मेरा ऑपरेशन करने के लिए मेरे माँ बाप को गांव से बुलाया था, इसका एक ऑपरेशन करने का।
मैं जिस ऑडियंस से शेयर करने चाहूँगी कि पेटकर जी हैड नॉट मेट हिज मदर 15 साल आप नहीं मिले थे।
जब माँ बाप और मेरा भाई हॉस्पिटल में मुझे देखने गया तो डॉक्टर लोगों ने जो मेरा ऑपरेशन वो सक्सेस नहीं हुआ, तो माँ बाप बोले अभी हम लोग जाते हैं। तो उसी टाइम मेरा दिल किया कि एक दफ़ा अपने गांव जाकर आऊँ, दिल कर रहा था। तो मैं भाई को, माँ को पूछा मैं गांव में आना चाहता हूँ एक दिन, लेकिन क्या है, माँ बोली ठीक है तेरे को मैं देख लूँगी, सब करूँगा। पिताजी और मेरा खुद का भाई बोला तुम गांव में जाकर क्या करोगे, तुम्हारा घर में की परिस्थिति ठीक नहीं है, आपको यहाँ पर है, तुमको अभी पेशाब कंट्रोल नहीं है, टॉयलेट कंट्रोल नहीं है, तो गांव जाकर क्या करेगा, कौन देखेगा। तो उसी टाइम भाई ने ऐसा बोलने से बाद पिताजी ने भी बोला गांव जाने से अच्छा नहीं, तुम इधर ही रहो करके बोलने से उन लोग मेरे को छोड़कर गांव चले गए और मैं अकेला हूँ। तो उसी टाइम मुझे दिन था, अभी दुनिया में जीकर क्या फ़ायदा, अपने खुद के माँ बाप अपने को देखने के लिए तैयार नहीं, भाई तैयार नहीं, तो दुनिया अपने को क्या देगी, क्योंकि ये कंडीशन इतना ख़राब था। तो इसी टाइम क्या कर दिया, मैंने कभी विस्की दारू नहीं पीता था। तो पहले टाइम जो टोपास है जो काम करता है, जो छोड़ा, तो वो चूरी से किसी को तंबाकू ला के देता था, किसी को सिगारेट ला के देता था, किसी को दर। तो उसी टाइम में मेरा बर्थडे था, तो बर्थडे में वो बोला अरे मुरली भाई अभी तुम तो बड़ा हो गया, अभी तुम एक पार्टी देना चाहिए। तो मैंने सोचा अभी ऐसा ही मरने का वैसे ही मरने का। तो उसी के लिए मैंने क्या किया था, सोने का टैबलेट है, हर नर्स के जो सिस्टर थी हॉस्पिटल के, उनको बोलता मेरे को नींद नहीं है, इससे 2 गोली उससे 2 गोली, मैं ऐसा 35 गोली लिया और बोला। तो उसको बोला तुमको एक पैसा है, मुझे टॉबस ने बोला कि मुझे मटका खेलने का है तो आप मुझे पैसा दो। मैं मुरली ऐसा नहीं करना, तुम कुछ ये करो, मेरे को पकड़े देंगे। नहीं मैं अभी बड़ा हो गया है, मेरे को एक रम का बॉटल ला कर दे दो, मैं तुमको मटका खेलने के लिए पैसा देंगे। तो उसको पैसा, तो बोला ऐसे ही मरने का वैसे ही मरने का, तो पॉकेट में 100 रुपया था, उसको दिया, ठीक है, वो खुश हो गया। अरे मुरली भाई एक बात का ये बोलो कि आपका भी नंबर लगाने का, मुझे मेरा नंबर लगे थे, ठीक है। मैं बोला ठीक है, मैं ऐसे ही मरने का पैसा रख कर क्या करने का जाने दो करके और दूसरा सब लिया। तो उसने मुझे पूछा है अभी क्या नंबर लगाओ, क्या नंबर लगाओ बोलने से मैंने ऐसे ही नशे, मतलब सिर्फ मरने का, अभी दुनिया में रहने का नहीं करके सोच कर ये करता है। तो वो ऐसा मजाक में उसको बोलता इक्का दूरी तिरी लगा दो, इक्का दूरी तिरी लगा दिया, दे दिया उसको पैसा और वो चला गया। और वो उधर जाकर मटका खेलने के लिए नंबर में लाइन में लग गया। इधर मैंने कभी विस्की वगैरह ऐसा कभी नहीं पिया था। वो 35 गोली मैंने वो विस्की के बॉटल के साथ पूरा बॉटल विस्की पी लिया और ये कर दिया। और ये मटका खेलने के लिए गया था, तो उधर जाकर उसने नंबर लगाया था, तो इक्का दूरी तिरी नंबर आ गया। उसी टाइम मुझे 44,000 का जॉकपॉट लग गया। जॉकपॉट लगने के बाद वो जो टोपास उधर से आया कोई, अरे मुरली भैया तुमको जॉकपॉट लग गया, जॉकपॉट लग गया। तो जॉकपॉट लग गया बोलने से बोला मैं भी बोला क्या नशे में था, पैसा पड़ गया था। तो उसी टाइम में अब उसने मुझे ऐसा ही जो उल्टा करके हिला दिया, क्योंकि मैं पी कर एकदम बेहोश पड़ गया। तो उसने उठाया और ये कर दिया। तो मैंने जो इस विस्की का बॉटल और जो गोली खाया था, तो मेरे को यूरिनल नहीं कंट्रोल होता था। पहले टाइम मुझे वो ये जो गोली और ये किया था उल्टी हो गया। उल्टी होने के बाद मेरे को थोड़ा सा होश आ गया, तो वो डॉक्टर ने बोला, अरे मुरली बाबा तुमको होश आ गया, बहुत अच्छा हो गया कुछ जी। तो उसी टाइम से जो टोपस ने लगाया, तो मटका खेलने का लिए जो पैसा लिया, तो देखो बॉम्बे में अभी भी रतन खत्री का नाम है, वो इतना सा चिट्ठी पर करोड़ों रुपए देते हैं अभी भी, इतना अच्छा। तो उसने मेरा सत्कार किया, मुरली बाबा तुम बहुत, आप मुरली पेटकर भैया आप बहुत अच्छे हैं। उन्होंने मुझे सत्कार करके छोड़ दिया। ये मेरा टर्निंग पॉइंट इधर हो गया।
तो मैं आपका कहानी में वापस आऊँगी। कबीर से मैं पूछने जा रही थी that in this whole story arc, which one, you know, of the many dramatic moments in his life, which for you really captures the essence of who Murlikant Petkar is? If you were to pick any one anecdote.
Oh, actually, there's so many of them. But if I was to pick that one...
Maybe you can say it in Hindi because then...
हाँ, तो मेरे लिए आपकी कहानी में सबसे ज़्यादा जो एक मेरे लिए लगा कि अच्छा इस पॉइंट पे जो आपने डिसाइड किया कि मैं अब गिव अप नहीं करूँगा, लड़ूंगा, वो मेरे लिए एक्चुअली जो था वो म्यूनिक में जब वो टेररिस्ट अटैक हुआ था, और वो सब आपकी ट्रेनिंग के बाद जब आपका फिर से जो आपको गोली लगी थी 65 वॉर में, और he was basically trying to get away from the attack that took place in at the Munich Olympics, और फिर आप गिरे थे, आपका पूरा वो फ्रैक्चर फिर से खुला था सर में, and if it...
Will you just share that with the audience?
Yeah, so basically he had been shot 9 times during the war, and one of the bullets had fractured his skull, and then subsequently he sort of recovered, trained as a swimmer, and reached the Munich Olympics to compete there. And the infamous, Black September.
Munich attack happened.
The Black September attack happened, and he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and he tried to get away on his wheelchair, and he went down some steps and fell and hit his head, and that wound opened up again. And basically what it meant was when he was swimming, if his head had hit the edge of the pool, it would have been fatal. And but he refused. He said, after coming this distance, I'm not stopping. And he continued, and he was told, don't do it. He was actually told that, what's the point of doing it, because you've reached the finals, it's good enough for an Indian. In a certain sense, this is actually very similar to what was told to Kapil Dev. And they said, you know that in the finals to win, you literally have to break a world record, and Indians don't break world records, so just give it up now. But he insisted, and he broke the world record, and he won India's first gold medal.
मुरलीकांत जी, आप 19 साल के थे जब आप पूरा पैरालाइज्ड हो गए, और फिर से आपको अपने आप को उठा के, और आप कह रहे थे कि ये सब इंस्पिरेशन भी आर्मी से मिला, आपका कोचेस से मिला, आपके दोस्तों से मिला. He also lost both of his closest friends in the 1965 war when he got paralyzed. पर जब मैं आपसे पहले बात कर रही थी तो आप कह रहे थे कि आपका पूरा लाइफ अगर आप देखें तो आप ओलंपिक गोल्ड से भी ज़्यादा गर्व लेते हैं कि आपका कहानी से अब डिसेबिलिटीज़ पे दूसरा मतलब दूसरा पर्सपेक्टिव से हम देखते हैं. तो आप उसके बारे में आप कुछ कहने चाहेंगे?
देखो, जो ये मेरी स्टोरी मेरे लाइफ के साथ घट गया है, वो कुदरत से, मतलब मैं किसी को ये नहीं बनाओ, किसी को ये नहीं करो ऐसा, लेकिन जो ये मेरा स्टोरी कुदरत मतलब जो है वो सब खरी खरी स्टोरी, इनको मैंने ऐसा हुआ वो सब कबीर साहब को मैंने बता दिए, ये इतना मेरा ये स्टोरी है, क्या क्या हुआ, तो उनको ये स्टोरी बताया. और कबीर साहब ने और कार्तिक आर्यन ने अच्छे हीरो का काम करके मेरा जो स्टोरी बनाया और आप दुनिया के सामने, आप लोगों के सामने जो लाया, इसके लिए मैं इनका बहुत, कबीर साहब का, और आपने इधर मुझे बुलाया, इसके लिए आपका बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ.
नहीं, वो तो है.
But you know, one of the surprising things was, and this is not something that I realized when I set out to make the film, but subsequently, that no one has made a film on the Paralympians.
Yeah.
Even Hollywood has not made a film on the Paralympians. And I was, actually I realized it and I started researching it because of a moment that happened in London. So we shot in London, cheating for Munich. And what I decided to do is that I decided to use, apart from Karthik, who was playing Murlikant Petkar, I decided to cast all the other swimmers as genuine Paralympians. I just think that just changes the whole energy. I'd done that in '83 also, where all the other teams are real cricketers, and it forces your actors to rise up to the occasion. So we used all the real Paralympians, and in one of the races, Karthik was flanked by the silver medalist and the gold medalist of the last Paralympics. And such is his training that he could keep up with, there's no way he could keep up with them for the entire 50 meters, but a shot would not last for more than 10 to 15 meters. He was able to keep up with them. And, we would call for cut and we would realign our cameras. It would take about 5, 7, 10 minutes, and they would just be, hanging around in the pool, holding the, lane markers. And in one such moment, the silver medalist and the gold medalist came up close to Karthik and they were chatting, and they said, "We just want to thank you for making this story." And that's when I realized that nobody has done a film on the Paralympians.
Which is more heroic than possibly the Olympians themselves.
Absolutely, because, it's, and therefore that one line which, his coach actually tells him that, when you win in the Paralympics, it's even bigger because it's not about defeating the other sportsmen. It's defeating the voice within you that tells you every day that you've already lost. And if you can conquer that.
पर पेटकर जी, अर्जुन जी, शायद आप उनको मैं, क्योंकि जब हम पहले बात कर रहे थे ना, वो कह रहे थे कि ये पूरा डिसेबिलिटी पे जो अब लोग अलग से वो बोलते नहीं है कि लंगड़ा और ये, तो आप अगर उस चीज़ पे आप उनसे, पेटकर जी आप कह रहे थे ना कि आपका ये पूरा दृश्य अलग हो गया, कि अब आपको अच्छा लगता है कि जो डिसेबल्ड है उनको लंगड़ा नहीं कहते, उनको ये नहीं कहते कि।
देखो, मैं गवर्नमेंट से थैंक्स बोलता हूँ कि पहले हम लोग, मैं जो गया था खेलने के लिए तो व्हीलचेयर में जाता था, तो पहले क्या करते थे, जो विकलांग आदमी है उसे ए लंगड़े, ए पांगड़े, ए आंधे ऐसा बोलते थे और ज़्यादा नज़दीक नहीं लेते थे, दूर दूर रखते थे। लेकिन अभी जो ओलंपिक्स गेम्स चालू हो गया, देखो ना, अभी आज का बात देखो, अच्छा आदमी से भी हमारे पैरा ओलंपिक में 8 मतलब गोल्ड मेडल के साथ 8 मेडल लिए है। वो मेरा चंदू चैंपियन, वो मेरा चंदू चैंपियन पिक्चर देखा, और जाने से पहले जो देखकर मेरा ये पिक्चर है वो देख करके पेटकर का, मैं अभी ओलंपिक खेलने के लिए जा रहा हूँ, तो आपने गोल्ड मेडल लाया, मैं भी गोल्ड मेडल लाया, तो मैंने उनको बोला ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा आप गोल्ड मेडल लेकर आओ। आज गेम जब से चालू हो गया 8 मेडल लाया, अच्छा आदमी से भी पैरा।
Yeah, so the Indian Paralympic team actually watched a screening of Chandu Champion before they left for Paris.
फर्स्ट डे फर्स्ट शो हमने जो है दिल्ली में पीवीआर में ये शो किया था, और ये सभी एथलीट्स जो ओलंपिक में गए हैं, जो पीसीआई है पैरालंपिक कमेटी ऑफ इंडिया, इन्होंने ये कंडक्ट किया था फिल्म, और पेटकर सर को वहाँ पे बुलाया था क्योंकि 75 डेज बच गए थे, तो हमने उनके साथ वो फिल्म देखी थी। जो अभी जिसका भी अभी जो भी मेडल ला रहा है ना, वो पहले फ़ोन कर रहा है कि सर हमने वो, कबीर सर ने जो बताया ना कि एक स्पोर्ट्स का लास्ट के 2 सेकेंड का क्या वैल्यू होता है, वो हम अभी सोच के कर रहे हैं कि इंडिया सबसे ज़्यादा मेडल लाएगा, और ये हमने टारगेट किया कि 25 मेडल्स ये साल हम पैरालंपिक में लाएंगे। तो ये चंदू चैंपियन की वजह से हो गया है। कबीर सर, थैंक यू।
I just wanted to share one other anecdote जो मुझे बहुत important लगा कि when he was bringing himself back into a life of action, it's not the government that supported him. There's others who funded his journey to the Paralympics, and JRD Tata had come to meet him and offered him a job. Actually, offered him money. He refused. He said, "I want a job." So JRD Tata gave him a job in the canteen. So while running the canteen, he was training to be compete in the Paralympics. and he was, training for 12 hours, 13 hours over and above his work. But it was J.R.D. Tata, and it was somebody who funded the...
सुमंत मुलगावकर, जिनके नाम पे सुमो गाड़ी है ना, वो सुमंत.
Cricketer भी था ना?
Vijay Merchant जी sir.
Vijay Merchant.
Vijay Merchant, he used to run a organization which used to fund Paralympians.
So Murlikant Petkar ji has truly straddled every, every possible obstacle to arrive at that moment.
अच्छा, मैं आप लोगों को सबसे ज़्यादा पूछ कर सब आदमी लोग आए, हर एक कपड़े में साथ है, ये मेडल क्यों लगा कर आया है? तो मैं एक हैंडीकैप होते हुए न्यू वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड करके गोल्ड मेडल आता हूँ और पद्मश्री गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया मुझे देती है. तो उसके लिए मैं आप लोगों को दिखाने के लिए कि आप लोग अभी इतने ठीक है दिल्ली में हैं, सब बड़े हैं, लेकिन आप लोगों ने पद्मश्री कितना आदमी ने देखा है? एक सेकंड, देखा तो ये मेरा दिल का ये कि ये जो मेरा मेडल लगाया है वो आप लोग देखकर अपने बच्चे लोगों को मोटिवेट कर एक पेटकर इतना उम्र वाला आदमी, विकलांग आदमी गोल्ड मेडल देख सकता है, आप क्यों नहीं? और मैंने 476 गोल्ड मेडल लिया. इसके लिए गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने मुझे पदकांता राजा पदवी दिया महाराष्ट्र में. महाराष्ट्र गवर्नमेंट ने मुझे शिव छत्रपति अवार्ड दिया है. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने पद्मश्री दिया है. मेरे नाम के 2-3 स्विमिंग पूल है और मेरा लाइफ का ये मकसद ये है कि नए अपने देश के लिए जो अभी आप लोग हैं अपना देश का नाम ऊंचा कर गोल्ड मेडल लाए, यही मेरी इच्छा है. और पिछले मैडम ने मुझे बोला, कबीर साहब ने मुझे इतना ये किया, इसके लिए मैं आभारी हूँ. और कुछ क्वेश्चन है आप लोगों को, किसी को क्वेश्चन है तो मैडम से पूछ लीजिए.
थैंक यू. मैं लास्ट में बस ये पूछूंगी कि कबीर आपको जो पिक्चर में आपका जो लाइफ स्टोरी बनाए हैं, आपको लगा कि आपका ट्रूथ को वो पकड़ पाए हैं? आपका कैरेक्टर क्या है वो पकड़ पाए हैं?
देखो, हर एक आदमी का दिल, ये जो मेरे घर में पहले आए थे तो उनको भी मुझे मालूम नहीं था कि ये डायरेक्टर साहब है, बड़े फिल्म बनाते कुछ नहीं, लेकिन इन्होंने मेरा घर में आकर 1 घंटा में ऐसा बातचीत करेंगे बोला तो 9 घंटा लगाकर मेरी कहानी 2-3 सब पूछा. बाद में मेरे बहू ने और उनके साथ में स्टाफ आया खाना करके, आपका जो कहानी है मैं दुनिया में पहुंचा दूंगा. इतना बात बोलने से कि दुनिया में भरोसा ये सबसे बड़ी चीज़ है. इन्होंने बोला मैं तो तेरे को दुनिया में जैसे मैंने अभी बाकी पिक्चरों में नाम कमाया वैसा मेरा भी नाम हो जाएगा, तुम्हारा भी नाम हो जाएगा, ये बोलकर चले गए. तो विश्वास आदमी को सबसे प्रोटेक्टेड रखना चाहिए और दोस्त को भी प्रोटेक्टेड रखना चाहिए.
You know, this was the attitude that when I first met Murlikant ji, sometimes when you approach subjects like this about paraplegics and Paralympians, you sort of try and, as a filmmaker, struggle with, okay, how am I going to portray this? I hope I get the politics right. I hope I don't, say things incorrectly. I have to be sensitive. And then I said, I'll need to figure out how to write this story. But when I spent time with him, I said, why am I struggling with all that? I'm just going to tell the story the way he's telling me. It's an amazing story of an underdog, of a man, the triumph of the human spirit, who just happens to be disabled. And that's the way I told the story. I said, this is not going to go into, oh, this is a disabled man, he's struggling. This is the joy with which he says it, that sort of energy that he has. Like, even when he's talking about committing suicide, it's a comic scene.
It's a comic scene.
Because he's winning 44,000 rupees while he's, attempting that. And he's jolted and, with that shaking up, he throws up because he's never drunk in his life. And that 1.5 bottles of whiskey comes out. So it was just that spirit which I said, I have to capture that in the film. This cannot become, at any moment in time, something that becomes morose or starts to drag you down, because that's not his life. He lived life in a certain way, and I just wanted to capture that in the film.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Petkar ji.
Thank you.
जावेद साहब ने एक बार कहा था कि मेरा हिंदी इतना बुरा है, he said आपका कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोटेक्शन है कि आप बंगाली हैं, आप हिंदी नहीं बोल सकते हैं, वो ठीक है. तो माफ़ कीजिएगा, पर बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, and thank you Kabir for bringing this story to light, and for Arjun being the son you are. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you. Do watch Chandu Champion, and thank you for being with us.
Mr. Murlikant Petkar is saying whoever wants a closer look at the Padma Shri can come to him.